Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Transcending Together podcast. It's me, your host, Alec John Bell, and I'm here trying to record this episode for a second time. Because the first time, for those of you who are unaware, I have two pets. I have a dog and I have a cat. And I just recently got this new cat, and she's a kitten. And she is just so noisy. She's so obnoxious. And I'm sitting here trying to record this episode, and in the background, I hear her playing with this toy, like just playing with it like nonstop. And I was like, "Hello, excuse me, ma'am. I'm trying to do something." And of course, me and my anxiety brain, most people probably would have been able to just record through her doing that, but I was not able to. I was sitting here talking, and I made it about 4 minutes into the podcast episode, and I was like, oh my gosh, I literally can't do this. It's driving me insane. So I took all of her toys because she needs to be quiet. Because I'm doing something. Of course, she's probably gonna run around and do things like that, which is not a big deal. But the dingling and the no, I can't do it. It's like sensory overload for me. Just too much going on all at once. So anyway, welcome back to the Transcending Together podcast. Today, I have a bit of a different episode for you because I had a different episode planned for this week. But there are two reasons why I changed it. So the original episode that I had planned for this week was going to be called God Made Me Gay and That's Okay. And I've been studying, and the whole topic of the episode was going to be homosexuality in the Bible and me personally being gay, me being a gay Christian witch. And so I wanted to do this episode, and I knew it was going to be a controversial episode, and I wanted to make sure that I had all my facts right. So I've been reading this book, and I've been doing all these things. And so I was like, okay, what can I do? Because I'm not prepared for this week at all. Not prepared at all. I tried to be prepared, and I was reading through the book that I was reading and taking notes and doing everything. And girl, let me tell you, I was not ready. I was not prepared. So I said, okay, what can I do this week instead of that topic? And then everything happened with Ukraine. And it is February 25th. I believe it's been 2 days since, or about 2 days, give or take, since Ukraine has been invaded by Russia. And I wanted to do this episode not because I want to talk about Ukraine, not because I don't think it's important to talk about Ukraine, but just personally for me, I don't want to talk about the issue in detail on the podcast, because that's not what this podcast is. What this podcast is a spirituality podcast. So I was like, okay, what can I do to kind of relate back to what's going on in the world right now? And then I realized that we're all dealing with the same thing right now. We're all terrified. We're all completely horrified at what's happening right now, or at least most of us are. And so I thought to myself, what can I do as a podcast episode about this topic without really being about this topic? And that is, what can we do as spiritual people to help us through the world when it's a mess? And we have instances of this happening all the time, like 9/11 or things like that. And it's hard to deal with these things when they happen. I was young when 9/11 happened, so I don't really remember all of the fear and the anxiety and the stress that people experienced. But I could imagine what that might have felt like. And so I wanted to spend today's episode going through a list that I made about what to do spiritually in times of stress when the world is a mess. And no, I'm not Dr. Seuss. I didn't mean for that to rhyme. That just happened to rhyme on its own. But this episode might not be very long, or maybe it will, depending on how much I actually want to talk. I don't really know. I'm not really sure. But I wanted to I have 12 things here that I have written down. And these are all tips that I have for people who are dealing with this whole Ukraine mess and kind of trying to make sense of it and trying to make sense of their spirituality. And I want to kind of point something out too. I was thinking about this last night. Sometimes when bad things are happening in the world, we as people tend to go, well, because something bad is happening in the world, I don't have a right to feel good about my life or feel good about myself because something terrible is happening. Scratch that, take that back, throw it away. That is not true. We as people, as humans, we have a right to feel good, even when there are bad things happening. Does that mean that we should be naive and, close our eyes and pretend like those bad things are not happening? No. But we also have a right to feel good about ourselves and feel good spiritually when bad shit's happening. So I have 12 things here that I want to go through. And some of them I'll kind of talk about a little bit more than others. And I'm kind of just winging this episode. I didn't really take notes. I wrote down the things that I wanted to talk about, but I'm kind of just winging this whole episode. So if this is completely discombobulated, then don't mind me. I kind of had to come up with an episode idea at the last minute, and I really, oh gosh, now I have the hiccups. I really hope that this benefits people in some way, shape, or form. So, as I said at the beginning of this episode, I am a Christian witch. So, little PSA here. The things that I have written down on my phone as things to do spiritually when you are dealing with the mess of the world. These are all things that I do. And I'm trying to bestow my knowledge onto you all. I have been a Christian my whole life. I have only been a witch for about 8 months. So there's some of these things I'm a little bit more knowledgeable on than others. And I think that's okay. I think it's okay to kind of share what little knowledge we do have, even if we're not completely knowledgeable on a subject. We don't have to, go to school for 8 years to know about something. You know what I mean? So this is what I've got. So I hope that you guys enjoy, or you all. I've been trying to refrain from the phrase you guys, but I know some people don't like it, and I personally am indifferent about it, but whatever. I hope that you all enjoy this episode, and I hope that you all get something out of it. Hey, ma'am, excuse you, I'm in the middle of something. Sorry, my cat. Again, I said, she's a kitten. She's 5 months old. No, do I have to take that away too? Oh my God. Okay, anyway, let's get started. So these things are not in any particular order. These are just the order that I came up with these things in. So the very first thing we're going to talk about, what to do spiritually when the world is a mess. The first thing I have is pray. Now, praying is very interesting to me because when I was younger, I always assumed that praying was like this Christian only kind of thing. I didn't realize, again, me being naive and young and, not very smart, I didn't realize that other religions and spiritual practices actually pray. And of course, I should have realized that with like Islam and, Wicca and, all of these other forms of religions that have like gods and goddesses. They're praying, but I didn't realize that. So, praying for me personally is a really personal thing. And I know that a lot of people tell me like, oh, you can just pray anytime you want. Like you can just pray. You could pray while you're on the bus. You could pray while you're in the car. You could pray while you're going to the bathroom. You could pray while you're taking a shower. You could pray while you're going to sleep. Like you could pray while you're doing anything. Okay, I am not like that. When I pray, I need to do like formal prayer, because that's just how I work. So when I pray at my altar. Sometimes I often write it down. So like last night, for example, I did a prayer/spell, which we'll get to spells in here in a little bit. But I did a prayer/spell for Ukraine last night. And I wrote down my prayers to each of my spirit guides and to God. And I said, like, this is what I want, whatever, very short, very brief, to the point. And I wrote it down. And then I said it out loud when I was done. Because I believe that writing it down and saying it out loud has a very powerful effect. I think a lot of people think, oh, you can just say it in your head. But I don't think people realize the power that our voices have. We have our voices for a reason, and I believe that when we speak things out into the universe, that they are heard. I really do believe that. And this is just my personal opinion, I don't really believe that praying in your head is, listen, I don't like to tell people what to do. I'm not in the game of trying to tell people what to do or telling people how to live their lives or do their spiritual practice. If you want to pray in your head and you think that that works for you, then that is totally fine. For me personally, I do not find that praying in my head works. I find that all of my prayers that I say out loud work best. So, praying is a very important thing. And I think regardless of what your religion is, whether you're a Christian, whether you're a witch, whether you're pagan, whether you're Muslim, whether you're Jewish, whether you're, it doesn't matter. Pray. Pray to your God or goddess. Or more, or multiple. Because I think that has a really powerful effect. And I say use your voice, but that's just my personal opinion, because I think that our voices have a very powerful effect. Now, don't get me wrong, our thoughts have powerful effects too. We can create worlds in our heads. I'm a writer, so for those of you who don't know, I've written and published books. I've created worlds upon worlds upon worlds in my head with my own thoughts and then typed them up onto paper. But again, they don't exist until I type them up onto paper. You know what I mean? Or into a document, I mean. So that's kind of how I feel about prayer. But I think that when we're dealing with the mess of the world, as I keep saying, praying definitely can offer people some comfort and some guidance. So definitely do that. The next thing I kind of do in conjunction with prayer, which is meditate. Meditate. People, meditate. I'm telling you, it works. I used to think that meditating didn't do anything. I used to think, like, I remember, so I struggle really, or I used to struggle really bad with mental health issues, for those of you who do not know. And I would go to psychiatric hospitals, and there was one time where I was in the hospital, and we had to do this guided meditation, right? And they're like, okay, so pretend that you have this tree, and then imagine all of your thoughts as like the leaves, and then imagine your thoughts as the leaves falling away and like flowing away in the wind, or something like that. Yeah, my tree caught on fire and like burned to the ground in my thoughts. I was like, this is a nightmare. Like, this is not working. The guided meditations just were not working for me. What I did find worked for me is getting an app called Insight Timer. And on Insight Timer, you're able to set. They have guided meditations too. So if you're into guided meditations, still use Insight Timer. But on Insight Timer, you're able to, it's free. You're able to set you're able to set an amount of time that you want to meditate for, set some background music, and set some bells and chimes and things like that, and literally just sit and listen to the music or listen to the sounds that you picked. And I love that. Because when I'm sitting in silence and I'm just listening to the music, I feel like I can hear God. I feel like I get answers to things that I need in my life. I feel like when we sit and we just listen and we're not listening to a guided meditation, I know it's hard. Believe me, it's difficult. I still can't really do more than like 10 minutes. Sometimes I get ballsy and do like 30 minutes, but most of the time I do like 5 or 10 minutes because I can't do more than that. But when you're sitting and you're just listening to the sounds, and you're just listening to whatever your higher power has to say to you, that is when you will get the best insight. No pun intended about the Insight Timer thing. That's when you get the best insight. I really, truly believe that. And I think that's really important. I really do. So, my suggestion, meditate. Use Insight Timer. Believe me, it's amazing. It's a wonderful app. And most of it's free. There are some things that you have to pay for, but most of it's free. So, go check it out. I wish I was sponsored. I wish I could be like, this is a sponsored episode by Insight Timer. No, it's not. I wish I could say that. It's not. Am I going to get in trouble because I said this is a sponsored episode by Insight Timer? I don't know. I don't know how the rules work. I was kidding. I'm not sponsored by Insight Timer. I wish I was. So the third thing that I have on here is journaling. So journaling is really important to me, and I don't do enough of it. I'll be completely honest. I suck at journaling. I think it's so important, especially when you're trying to get all of your thoughts out and talk about what happens, what's happening in your life and what you're feeling. And I think it's really important to get your feelings out. And sometimes talking about it doesn't really help. Sometimes we need to actually just write it down. And I have a journal. This is my Book of Shadows. And it's not very full because I haven't used it very much. I need to write down what I did last night for Ukraine in there as a little spell / prayer. But I think that you need to write everything down. Everything that you do, whether it's a meditation, whether it's a prayer, whether it's a spell, no matter what it is, write it down. Because you need to keep track of these things, especially when you're dealing with your own spirituality. Like, these things are important. They're all important. And I just think that journaling is really, it's kind of like a mindfulness technique, but it really is helpful for me. And I hope that it is for you too. That's really all I have to say about journaling. I mean, just write it down. Girl, write it down. We live in a very fast-paced life. And sometimes we forget to slow down and take a moment to reflect on what's actually going on in our lives. And that's what journaling allows us to do. It allows us to reflect. And I think that's really important. Next on the list is spells / witchcraft, which I am very new at. So I have yet to do a successful spell. Actually, no, I did do a successful spell. I did. There was a healing spell that I did for somebody, and the person did get healed. It took a while, but they did get healed. So, I guess you could say that spell worked. But spells and witchcraft is a little bit difficult for me because I'm so new to it, so I don't really have too much to say other than the fact that, like, practice your craft. Practice it all the time. I mean, if you're a witch, that is. If you're not a witch, completely avoid this part of the video or the podcast. But I think that spell crafting and witchcraft can be a very beautiful thing. And I think there's this stigma attached to it that it's like this dark, evil, like mysterious, like kind of thing, when it's like really not. It's like you're just working with energy. You're just manipulating energy that we all have, that we all deal with on a regular basis. It's not like you're doing anything crazy. I mean, some people do crazy things, but I mean, most of the time, it's not anything completely weird or out of the, like, I don't know. There's just this huge stigma attached to spellcrafting. And I had to get over my own ignorance and reservations about spellcrafting and come to the conclusion that I wanted to be a Christian witch. Not only was I a Christian witch without even realizing it, but I wanted to be. And I had wanted to be for a long time, but I had all of my reservations and my personal opinions about it. And I didn't realize that there's so much goodness that comes out of spellcrafting and witchcraft. And people have this negative connotation attached to it. And it's really just not that. So when we're dealing with the mess of the world, how do we do that? For me, last night, and I'll share this with you, I know a lot of people say not for witches not to share what they did, but I shared this on Facebook, so I feel comfortable enough sharing it here. I did a candlelight spell last night / prayer, where I took a white candle and I covered it in elderflowers and coated it in elderflowers, and a blue candle and coated it in lavender flowers. So the white candle coated in elderflowers was for protection, and the blue candle coated in lavender flowers was for peace and tranquility. And I lit these candles and I said my prayer alongside lighting the candles. Hey! No, ma'am! Sorry, I didn't mean to clap into the microphone. So anyway, I said these, I lit the candles and I said the prayers, like, as I lit the candles. And it was a very basic thing, but it really gave me some peace. And I think that the intention, I believe that a lot of times we forget that our intention and what we put out as our energy is what's most important. And I've learned that over the last few years, is that our energy is most important. Our intention is most important. Hey! Get away from there! Sorry, she keeps messing with my headphones. Hey! No! Finally, she walked away. I am so sorry. If I can figure out a better way to do this episode without being interrupted by my animals, I will for sure figure it out eventually. But right now, I do this in my living room, and my animals are, like, in my way. And so I apologize for the interruptions. I know some of you probably don't mind, but anyway, so what I was saying is our intention and our energy that we put into things is what's most important. And I think that sometimes we forget that. We forget how much power we have as spiritual beings, that our energy has so much power. And that's what spellcrafting is. So figure out what works for you. I love candle spells. Candle spells are one of my favorites. But, you know, everybody's different. Everybody has different things that they like and prefer. So definitely find what you like and what you're interested in and do that. And work on it. And it's a craft. So you're always going to be learning and you're always going to be growing. It's never something where you're going to be like, oh, I reached this end here and I'm finally at the point where I want to be. No, it's an ever growing process, I guess you could say. So that's what I have to say about spells and witchcraft. So the next thing that I have on here is a very simple one. Yoga. I have not done yoga in like 2 years. I was doing yoga every day for a very long time. Like a few months. Well, not a very long time. It was like a few months. No, it was more than a few months. It was like almost a year. It was more than a few months. It was like a year that I was doing yoga all the time. And I stopped. And I need to get back into it. And I think that is something that I need to work on. And yoga is just this beautiful thing, especially when we have all of this stress and tension in our bodies. It's a great way to just relieve that stress and tension, you know? And I find it really helpful whenever I do it. You know, I'll be like in downward dog and shit, and like I'll have my butt up in the air, and you know, I'll feel really good doing it. I really will. It'll feel really good. But I just gotta find the motivation to actually do it. And as I'm sitting here talking about it, I realize that I sound so lazy. But I'm always so busy with everything else in my life, like school and this podcast and YouTube and writing and everything else, that like trying to find like 10 minutes to do yoga seems like a real challenge. But it's only 10 minutes. Find a video. Yoga with Adrienne on YouTube is amazing. It's amazing. She does the best videos. And she has yoga for like every kind of situation that you could ever possibly imagine. So definitely try yoga. So this one is one of my favorites. Go out into nature. So I love nature. And nature is a very healing thing for me. I'm an earth sign. I'm a Virgo. So for me, Earth is just amazing. And I hate that like we live these lives where we're so indoors all the time and we don't get to focus so much on the outdoors. But I think sometimes when we just need that breath of fresh air and we can just go outside and go barefoot. I'm telling you, it works. Go barefoot and just... I'm reading a book right now. Where is it? I'm reading a book right now. I'm reading a book right now called The Healing Magic of Forest Bathing. And it's all about just like spending time in nature. And it's amazing. It really is. I think that nature has healing properties to it. And we forget that because we live such indoor lifestyles that we forget that being outside and being connected to our mother is really beneficial. I believe it is really beneficial. And I think connecting it back to like what's going on in the world right now. What is the one thing that everybody in the world has in common? We all live here on Earth. And I think sometimes we forget that. You know, we live in countries divided by invisible borders or sometimes physical ones. And I think we forget that we're all living on the same planet. And when we see things like what's going on in Ukraine happening, sometimes it feels foreign to us because we're so separate from that. But we're all living on the same planet. What's happening to Ukraine is happening to us. It's a... What's the word that I'm looking for? Not a travesty. It's really bad for everybody. It's not good for anybody. And it really sucks. So, definitely go out in nature. Spend time with our planet, the planet that we all share together as humans. Go out and share that and enjoy that together. So next, I have connect with spirit guides or God. Hey! Next, I have connect with spirit guides or God, or both. I worship God. God is the only being that I actually worship, but I do have spirit guides that help me along the way. For example, I have Mother Mary. She helps me a lot. I have Archangel Michael. He helps me a lot. So connect with your guides. Connect with your higher power. And I don't really know how to do that. Or I don't really know how to tell you to do that because it's different for everybody. But find ways to connect with your spirit guides. Find ways to interact with them. For me, like, for example, so I have Archangel Michael as one of my spirit guides. And I have this oracle deck that is an Archangel Michael oracle deck. And it's amazing, and it has little prayers on it, and it's amazing. It really helps me connect with him, and gives me some answers sometimes. So find ways to connect to your spirit guides and do that, especially when you're in times of distress, because they can be of great service to you. Similar, going off of that, is connect with your ancestors. And I also want to add on to this is connect with friends who have passed on too. So I want to share a brief little story here. So there was a moment where I was in the hospital recently, like a year or so ago. I went to the hospital because there was something going on. I can't remember what it was. I was having pain or something. Something was going on, and I can't remember exactly what it was. But anyway, I was in the hospital room, in the emergency room, and I all of a sudden heard this voice in my head from this girl who had passed on. This girl that I knew briefly in high school. And we weren't close friends or anything, but she said, like, you're going to be okay, or something like that. And I was like, what? I was so confused. I was like, why is she talking to me right now? And then I went to her old Facebook page, and I was looking through her profile pictures, and I just stopped at one, and I saw a picture of her, and I just started crying, and I felt this emotional, like I felt her touch me. And I think that it's really important to remember that our friends are our family too. And even though ancestors are important because they're connected to our bloodline, and our bloodlines are definitely important, I think that we also should acknowledge our friends who have passed on as well, and other people that we know, people that we knew in life, because they're important too. And being able to connect with them and kind of get some insight from them sometimes, I think that's really important as well. So, one of my favorite things is to do tarot and oracle card readings. I love tarot. Tarot I got into over a year ago, and I love oracle card readings. I originally got into oracle cards first, and then I got into tarot cards. But yeah, I just love it. You know, you can kind of ask whatever question you need answers to, and then you can get answers. Sometimes they're a little bit more direct than others, and sometimes they're a little bit like tarot's a little bit more straightforward. Tarot's like, you know, like tarot can be a little rough sometimes, but oracle cards tend to be a little bit more positive and uplifting, and I tend to like those for really difficult questions, just because sometimes tarot can be too much for me, personally. But I think that, you know, when we're dealing with things like what's happening in the world right now, we can ask our higher powers or our spirit guides through the cards and be like, what is going on? What should I do? Because sometimes when we have things in the world going on, like what's going on, we feel powerless and we feel like we can't do anything. And so we should ask, what can we do to fix this situation? And sometimes you'll get an answer. And I really like tarot and oracle cards. I think they're really great. This one is really simple. Help others. This is a little bit different than the other ones that I wrote on the list because it's not really a spiritual thing, but it could be. You could, you know, pray for somebody, or do Reiki for somebody, or do a tarot or oracle card reading for somebody, or, you know, even just even just giving somebody some food or giving somebody some money or who needs it, or, whatever it might be. Like, help other people. When the world is a mess, help other people, because other people need it. And do what you can. Even if you can't do a lot, even if you can do $5. $5 is more than that person had before. And it doesn't always have to be financial either. It can be, just spending time with them, or going out with them, or I don't know, just do something. Help other people. We live in such a self-indulgent world that we forget that other people need our help. And we get so self-focused sometimes that we forget to help other people. So that's why I put this on the list. So we have 2 things left. The second to last thing is connect with animals. So I have 2 animals, and I love them so much. I had another animal who recently passed away. If you did not watch my previous Transcending Together podcast episode, I had a kitten who passed away, and he was an amazing kitten. He was so beautiful, and he was so loving and sweet and kind, and he was just absolutely amazing. But he unfortunately had to be put to sleep because he was sick at 8 months old. And I think connecting with animals really helps me personally when I'm in times of distress, like just cuddling up next to an animal. My new kitten doesn't like to be cuddled very much, but I'm working on it. I'm trying to get her there. But connect with animals. Connect with your animals. Connect with other people's animals. Animals are our friends, and I think that's really important to remember. The last thing, which I didn't really want to end on this one, but I didn't really know. I wanted to kind of rearrange the order of these, but I forgot to do that before I recorded this episode. So the last thing that I have on here is to read the Bible or other spiritual text. So I know for other people who are Christians or maybe Muslims who have the Quran, or Jews who have the Tanakh, I know that spiritual texts are very important to us. And when we are in times of distress, sometimes we just flip open to a page and go, okay, God, tell us what's going on. And so I think I wanted to include this because I think, that is just these spiritual texts, even though I think they were written by humans, I think they offer a lot of emotional support for people sometimes. And they do have a lot of good advice, and sometimes not so good advice, but they do have a lot of good advice. And they do offer substance for people. So I wanted to include this as well. But anyway, those were my 12 things to do spiritually when you are stressed and the world is a mess. Okay, so I got cut off at the end of the other podcast recording. So what I was saying is that I am changing the episode upload days to bi-weekly. So they'll be going up Sundays bi-weekly. If that does not work out, I'm going to be changing to monthly. And I know that monthly is not an ideal situation, but I am in school and I am writing books and I am doing a YouTube channel. So there's just a lot going on. So we're going to try bi-weekly and see how that goes. But if that doesn't work, then we're going to have to change to monthly. But hopefully the bi-weekly works. So thank you so much for listening and watching this podcast episode of Transcending Together. I really enjoyed doing this episode, and I can't wait to bring you the next episode, which is going to be God Made Me Gay, and That's Okay, which is going to dive into the homosexuality issue within the Bible. And I think that's going to be a really fun, controversial episode, and I like controversy. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I just thank you so much for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, just keep listening because you are boosting my rankings. So I appreciate it. So thank you all so much for watching and listening, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye.